Hey, and welcome to the Ambitious Bookkeeper Podcast. I'm Serena Shoup. I am a CPA and mom of three, and I'm running a virtual bookkeeping business mostly from my home. You're in the right place if you're a bookkeeper, accountant, or an accounting student, and you know that your purpose is bigger than sitting in a cubicle. If you're ready to learn some actionable tips and strategies to help you start and grow a bookkeeping or accounting business, I hope you stick around. Welcome back to the Ambitious Bookkeeper Podcast. I'm really excited to have another guest today. Her name is Moran, a mom to two beautiful babies under 3, but also a fur baby, Henry, and a wife to the most supportive husband ever. But she's also the owner of the Mompreneur Guide. And she also hosts a podcast. She's all about minimalist business strategies, which we're going to get into today. I'm really excited about that. And she helps experienced mompreneurs get focused and re-energized around their mission and offer so that they can live present and productive life that they crave. So welcome, Megan. I'm really excited to have you here. If you want to do more of an intro on yourself, feel free.
Yeah, awesome. Well, thank you so much for having me, Serena. I'm really excited to chat with you and all of your amazing listeners. It's just so fun to get to help people simplify their businesses. That's what I'm all about, is how can we simplify what we're doing so that we can get out of our offices after being productive and go be more present. And that's really what I'm all about these days is how can I help other mompreneurs do that?
Awesome. I love it. And there's a lot of women in my audience. I guess I naturally attract moms who want to start bookkeeping businesses. Most of us have some sort of like accounting background or experience and are wanting to take it online into a virtual bookkeeping business or accounting or tax. And so there's that balance of continuing our career or using our background and serving business owners, and then balancing I struggle with this of balancing when to turn off my entrepreneur brain and actually be present with my kids and my family. So I'm really excited to get into this today.
Yeah. It's a challenge. I mean, that's a nice thing about having kids is it forces us to have to put stuff away, or hopefully, it forces us to have boundaries or time constraints, which can be looked as a negative, but I think it's actually a positive when it comes to our business, because then we can't be left to our own devices to do too much, or we have to learn how to simplify it out. So I'm excited for us to talk about that today.
Exactly. I mean, that's something that's even come up in some of the other groups that I'm in of just being realistic with ourselves about how much time we actually do have. That was something I even struggled with before I started my business, just leaving corporate and becoming a stay-at-home mom. I thought I was going to be able to get so much done after my baby was born. And it was I'm spending all day on the couch nursing. It was crazy to go from this super productive person in society to being forced to literally sit on my butt.
Yeah. It is such a shift. When it comes to our kids, especially if you have younger kids now, I have a 2.5-year-old son and a 1-year-old daughter. And so they're very much dependent on me. So I can't speak to life when kids are in school. I know that's a lot of them depending on you mentally, but yeah, it's hard. You have to end up carving out and being very intentional about having time for your business so you can be productive, but then also fit in. And we want to have that mom side of us too, where we're being present. And so it's a I don't want to say balance, because I feel like that's used often, and it's kind of this great juggle, or like a river where it's just flowing and we're going each way that we can. But if we could do it with a little bit more ease and do it more simply and not overcomplicate things for ourselves, I think that's really the key for this conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's get into that. How do you specifically help women achieve that in their lives?
Yeah. So I think the first biggest thing when it comes to simplifying your business is having the awareness of why it's so important. Because I think a lot of us, especially if you're more experienced, you've been an accountant for a while, you've been in this space for a while, maybe you've had your online business for a while. And so we all crave this simple business. It sounds great on paper and we all want it. But then I think we forget, and then we end up overcomplicating. We forget that that's our mission, and then we end up tacking more and more things on. And so the first thing that I want to share is why it is so important to have a simple business. is not only for you in your mindset, and so you can save time and have more moments to be with your kids or have some me time if we're lucky enough, do all of those things. The reason that simplifying is so crucial and is non-negotiable is because first and foremost, it gives you clarity and it gives your clients clarity. Because when things are overcomplicated and a mess and you're distracted and you're all over the place, your energy is spread too thin. It's like you're going very wide instead of going deep on something. And so the first thing that I would encourage you to do is realize that simplifying should really be a non-negotiable in your business. It's something that you need to come back to again and again and think to yourself, have I overcomplicated things? Which means that it's clouding the information that my clients are hearing, which means it's leading to less conversions, which means we're getting further away from our end goals. And also it's doing the same things to ourselves.
Right.
And so a way that you can start to do that, a way that you can start to understand like, am I in that boat? Am I overcomplicating things? Is getting super clear on these three things I think are most important to start with, which is first your legacy. And that's thinking through at the end of the day, like 30,000 miles up or whatever they say that quote is, like get as high as possible. When we think about at the end of the day, what is it that we want to have accomplished, to have had said about us? Like, what does our legacy look like? And for me, one of the ways that this started with understanding this concept and implementing it into my business was I thought to myself, what do I want my kids to say I do? Like if they're at school and they're saying mom does X, Y, and Z, well, what is that? And so for me, I wanted them to be able to say, my mom helps other moms get to spend more time with their kids and do these other cool, amazing things. And so thinking about in your business, like, yes, you have your profession, but thinking about it more honed in of why are you even doing it? And so we've got our legacy and that like end of the game. What does that look like? But then more specifically on that path, we have our why. And so for me, as an example, like my why am I even doing a business is to help these mompreneurs, but then also because I want to be around for my kids and I have goals that I want to reach as well. Like I am an individual and I don't want to get lost in that shuffle of always serving and never have had done anything for myself.
Right.
So you've got your legacy, which is like what you want people to say about you at the end, that impact that you want to make. You have your why, which is like your driving force and your fuel of what are you looking at every day? Who are you doing this for? And then the last part of that is how you kind of wrap it all up into your mission, which is also like your core message. And so when you really think about it, and again, for me as an example, like my mission is to be a present and productive mompreneur. And so that's what I want to help women with as well. And when I can go back to those three things to guide all of my decisions like a compass, it also makes it really easy to simplify what I'm doing. Because if it's not helping me towards my mission and helping me be present and productive, helping other women be present and productive, why am I doing it? If it's not helping me spend more time with my family, why am I doing it? And if it's not mapping towards the legacy that I want to leave at the end of the day, and it's not, in my case, bringing more mompreneurs into the space so that they can do this work that they love, then again, why am I adding that into my days and my schedule and my business? It's clouding the overall mission that I'm trying to work towards. So that would be the first thing that I would say.
Wow. Yeah. That's, I always wonder, well, I don't always wonder. It's something that I used to always wonder about. Now I'm starting to get more clear on it. But when people are talking about aligned action, it's like, well, what the heck does that even mean? Yes. And now I think you've explained it in a really beautiful way that helps us understand exactly what that is. Like if the actions that you're taking in your business are not aligned with those three things in your business, then that's not aligned action. You're just like floundering or shiny object syndrome or whatever, so that was really awesome. Thank you for that.
Of course. Yeah. And then to take it a step further, I think the other thing about aligned action is remembering as the CEOs of our business, as the owners of our business, that we get to choose. And so sometimes like we might do things that could match our mission, but then there's also your energy and your excitement about it. And so when you think about it, like let's take bookkeeping services, for example, think about all the different ways you could help people with their bookkeeping. Same concept, but you could do a course on it. You could have a membership about it. You could have group coaching. You could have one-on-one. You could do it for them. Like that same thing can be done in a multitude of ways to a multitude of different people, a bunch of different ideal clients, and at a bunch of different price points. You could be a super high-end person who does it. You could be someone who wants to help people on a budget. And so I think sometimes we get caught up in maybe who our current client is or what people are telling us they need from us. And that can still map to your legacy, your mission, and your why. But the alignment, the other part of the alignment is within yourself and what excites you and what feels good to you. And so not only do we need to make sure we map back to those end goals, but also making sure that we're structuring in our business in a way that works for us, because we'll find the people, we will find the different processes to get them there, and we can make the money that we want to make from doing it. But if you're not energized by it and you're not fueled by it, then you're not going to help people and serve people in the best way, and you're not serving yourself. So I think that's the other part of the alignment as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. So let me look at my questions. I had some other questions that I wanted to ask you. We kind of already talked about focused, aligned action. So the other piece that I wanted to ask you and talk about is helping people figure out what their mission is or their legacy. Like, is there a process that you take people through to help them identify that?
We'll be back after a quick break.
This episode of the Ambitious Bookkeeper Podcast is sponsored by my brand new free training, The Ultimate Guide to Creating a Profitable Bookkeeping Business. In just 1 hour, you will learn 3 keys to creating and launching a profitable bookkeeping business. We will map out your path to creating a bookkeeping or accounting business that keeps you in control of your time, priorities, and expertise. From someone who built a 6-figure firm on part-time hours. That's right. You can stay in control of your time, keep family as your priority, and serve your clients well. It just takes a little strategy up front, and I'm going to help you with that during this free training. So head over to the show notes to sign up now for the next training and find out how you can choose the work you do, kick imposter syndrome to the curb, use tech to be super efficient, which all leads to a profitable business. Just head on over to ambitiousbookkeeper.com/training, and I will see you there.
Yeah, definitely. There are a lot of different questions. And the way that I went through this myself was spending a lot of time like journaling and finding these questions and things like that. And so I love that I can help women streamline this process, because in all honesty, it took me over 6 months to really hone in on that stuff. And now we can get this done in one session. Like we can hone it in a lot. And so a couple of the things that you could think about for your legacy, if we want to start there, is at the end of the day, like I said, what do you want people to say about you? And you can also think like, how do you want them to feel when they get into your presence and through the work that you do with them? Like literally just listing out words. Another story that comes to mind that I think really illustrates legacy is one time we were in the car and we were on our way to the zoo. All of you moms can relate to this. And the Weemoe song that you hear in The Lion King, if you're familiar. So somehow my son got onto that. And so that was just on repeat in the car. But the version was not the Lion King version. It was like the original, or one of the originals, I should say. So my husband and I are I think you guys can relate, kind of data focused, and we're interested in like, well, what's the background story? So long story short, we look it up, and that song was recorded in like, I think it was the early 1900s. It was a while ago. And what it was this janitor, he worked at the recording studio in Africa, and he went into the studio and he ended up getting a chance to record. And so he recorded, and the Weemoe is actually not the correct translation. It actually, I forget exactly what it was, but anyways, the words meant about like the lion sleeping. So anyways, he went in and he did this, and he made this song, and then some English company bought it, and the song you hear today is that version. It's not the original. And so it got me thinking in that moment, like, oh my gosh, that guy had a calling. He went after it. He was a janitor, but he went after his calling and he went in and he created something that 100 years later we're listening to today. How amazing is that? That he shared his gifts, and now like it's had many iterations. It's been used in so many ways, and unfortunately we don't attribute it to this man. But when you think about yourself in that story, like 100 years from now, is there a mark that you would love to leave? Or maybe in this case, like generational wealth that you can leave people with? Like, what is there that you could leave that is timeless and that you can help people with that's timeless? And so that really hit me for my legacy of thinking like, what is my long-term impact that I want to make?
Okay.
Yeah. When it comes to your mission, that one for me is like, what is that driving force and like that core message that when I'm going out and I'm sharing, you're probably not just sharing that I'm an accountant. You probably have more differentiators to that and why you want to do it and what is that driving force. And so those would be questions that I would start to ask yourself is like, what differentiates you and what is something that you would go to bat for and that you could talk about endlessly? Like if you hear me, you can hear my excitement, and I come from an Italian family, so that pairs into it as well. But like when you get so lit up about it that you could talk or get onto a podcast and not have to prep at all, like that is probably part of your mission and where you would put your heart on the line to help people with what they're doing. And so you could see how those immediately fuel you and allow you to take more action, but also can help you in simplifying backwards to them, reverse engineering your actions so that you make sure that you're always doing the work that fuels you.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. One of the things that, that comes to mind when you talk about your mission is like the kind of like, we believe statement, or I believe, like, we believe that when women understand their numbers, they can grow their numbers and have massive impact. Like that's our mission in my bookkeeping business. So having something kind of like that. So if you're listening, you can pause and like think about what is your I believe statement, right? That helps drive your mission.
Yes, I so agree.
That's really awesome that you're able to take people through that process in just one session, because that's been something that it can kind of always be being developed. For instance, like I'm constantly thinking of like, what are our core values, and like, what are the things like as a business that I really want to embody. And so I'm constantly like journaling ideas on that. So it's definitely something that feels like it's never nailed down. But you're saying that you can help people nail it down in one session. So I'm very curious.
Yes. And I do agree with you. And I want to leave that caveat in there. Like the way that I view business, and I think it's really how you view life, is I view it very cyclically. So we get clarity and then we take aligned action like we talked about, and then we need to recalibrate. And so I like to work on a 90-day schedule, because this is also how we can help simplify. Because I think the other innate part of simplifying is that it brings focus to it, which again can be hard. We need some structure around what we're doing, because innately mompreneurship does not have structure, which has great parts to it, the flexibility, but then it's also hard because we don't have stuff forcing us to do things. So the thought there is, if we work on 90 days, it gives us enough time to get clear on what we're doing, to clarify our mission, all of those things, to go take action based on that, and to focus that action on, like I said, the 90 days. So if the first month, let's say, is the clarity, then the next 2 months is action around one thing each month. And so that's another way you can help to start simplify your business. So example, like let's say you're launching a podcast, just because we're both podcasters and we can speak there. So let's say you're launching a podcast because your mission is to help women with their numbers and you want to share more about what you do. So you might need to spend some time getting clear on that mission, what it looks like, the whole space of podcasting, etc. And then the next 2 months you can focus on getting the engagement down, getting the recordings down, like picking one thing. And then the final month, you can focus again in on one action that you could take. And then at the end of it, because it's a cycle, we go back to clarity. We look at the data. This is something I'm sure you are, all of your listeners are very good at, is looking at the data and uncovering what worked, what didn't, how can we continue and pivot and move and grow, because it's all about putting one foot in front of the other. I think a lot of the times we overcomplicate because we think it has to be this bigger thing than it is. But what if we looked at our business more simply about how we're helping people, that legacy that we're leaving, and taking just one step at a time to work towards those goals, that legacy, and getting us there.
Yeah, I love that. And if you're a bookkeeper and you're listening, you can absolutely apply this to the work that you do with your clients too, especially if you're getting into like an advisory role of taking them through that 90-day cycle. So that's perfect. I'm always looking for little hidden gems in the way other businesses operate and bringing that into the bookkeeping profession. That's kind of how I've built my business, is like all the stuff that I've learned about like online marketing and online business. I've taken pieces of it and applied it into an industry that is very by nature archaic. Like, and they take a long time to catch up with like where technology is and stuff. So I encourage my listeners to do the same thing, and kind of like, that's how you're going to set yourself apart, is doing things differently than how they've always been done. Right.
Well, and I think it's so helpful too, like in this space, I like to look at other things too. So like I mentioned, the cyclical thing, to me, that makes sense, because just like think about nature or a tree or a flower, like that's cyclical. Or I did a live a couple weeks ago about how we can look to athletes for simplifying our schedules. Because when you think about an athlete, there's like innate structure. Like if you're a professional athlete, you have certain things you have to do in order to like be the best. And that includes rest, which as mompreneurs, we tend to forget about, but that they know is what optimizes them to perform the best. And so I think that I love how you do that. I love how you're going out there and looking at other things that you can bring into your space. And I love that we can have that conversation and look elsewhere to help us grow, because yeah, it's all helpful and it all tends to relate. I just keep finding that.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, this is so awesome. So I kind of want to take it back a little bit, because I don't think we really talked about it, but how did you get into this space of helping other mompreneurs?
Yeah. So my story actually starts back as a kid. I was actually raised by a mompreneur. So I know what our kids are going through on both sides now.
Mm-hmm.
And so at this young age, not only was I raised by a mompreneur, but also a family of entrepreneurs. Almost everybody in my family owns their own businesses. And so I was encouraged to figure out what I would enjoy doing and go do something about it. So I was always told that I had an eye for style and putting things together. And in high school, actually, I started a personal styling business. And eventually, again, one foot in front of the other, I did a lot of things. I started as a blog, I did one-on-one styling services. And really what I was helping people do was simplify their wardrobe and their closet by cleaning it out, decluttering it, and then knowing what to wear, which is very similar to what I'm doing today. So I did this personal styling, a mobile boutique, all of these things for over 10 years. And eventually my thought was, I saw my mom being a mompreneur, being present and productive. And so I thought, okay, cool. I'm going to have this thing started when I'm young. And I know eventually I want to have kids, but that's down the road. So it'll be a well-oiled machine by the time my kids get here. I'm sure we're all chuckling to ourselves now, as I do every time I tell this story, because that's just not how things work, A. And B, when your kids come, it's just a game changer. It's so different. Yeah. And so what happened was my kids came along. Like we mentioned, I have a 2.5-year-old son and a 1-year-old daughter. And so my son came along and I was starting to realize, this is not quite working how I wanted. One, because I was realizing it wasn't the legacy that I wanted to leave. It wasn't what I wanted my son to tell people that I did. And then secondly, I just felt this pull that it was time for me to do something more, something different. And it timed up really well between the pandemic, which started the day that I found out I was pregnant with our daughter and our final child. Lots of fun. And so I was very much in person then. And so that kind of worked out well to slowly wean. I also knew I would want to take a maternity leave. She was due in November of 2020. And so it just kind of all fit into this place of, okay, I have been raised by a mompreneur. I've studied entrepreneurship. That was my major in college. I only worked for startups like Poshmark, if you're familiar. I worked for their headquarters. Mm-hmm. I'd always been entrenched in this space, and people would come to me with questions about their business because I had started mine so young. And so it just kind of all culminated. Like I knew I was meant to do something more, meant to do something different. My daughter was coming. This was going to be like my long-term forever kind of a thing. Now that she's here, no more kind of interruptions of things, hopefully. And yeah. And so that was really how I transitioned and pivoted. It's been a year now since I've been in this space, podcasting and coaching and just helping women, like I said, simplify like I used to do for your closet. Now I'll just help you do for your business.
That's awesome. I definitely need someone to do that for my closet. I struggle with style, but I'm also thinking like I have a teenage daughter and she's very into style as well. And so she's at that point in her life where she's like trying to think about what she wants to do after high school. So we've talked about lots of different things and definitely think she should do around beauty and style because she's always been drawn to that world. So that's really exciting to hear that you were able to do that at such a young.
Yeah. Well, and that's the beauty again of mompreneurship and what we're doing because we're modeling. So I'm sure your daughter is seeing you do what lights you up and she's seeing you and how you're doing that. And so she can now have the awareness and the possibility of, oh, I can do whatever I want to do. And that's another part of my goal. Like being raised in that way helped me so much because I went to college and into job interviews and I had already created a business. And so what a great gift that is that you're giving your daughter, that you're talking through that with her. Here are possibilities, not you have to do the traditional route or you can do both. So that's another reason why obviously I'm such a huge cheerleader of this space and why it's so amazing that your listeners are doing that for themselves as well. And hopefully their children as well.
Yeah, definitely. Lots of my listeners have their own little ones as well. Well, I would love to share what you have going on in your world and how people can learn more about working if they so wish to. So what do you have going on these days?
Of course. Yeah. So you can find me on Instagram. It's Mompreneur Guide. I love to use social to actually be social. As you know, I love to use audio messages and get to connect and chat. So that is one way that we can connect. I also have a Simplify My Biz workshop coming up. It's a free live coaching event. So if you want to come and learn more about how you could simplify your biz, actually get my eyes on your business and link your arms with other mompreneurs who all have the same mission, this is going to be a great opportunity for you. And I can tell you where you might be overcomplicating things and how to uncover what is the next best step that you should take. So that is always a great place to go. And all of that can be found at themompreneurguide.com, along with my podcast, if you're interested in more mompreneur tips to be more present and productive.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Megan, for coming on. I truly appreciate it. And I will hopefully talk to you soon on Instagram.
Yes, that, and you're going to be on my podcast. So
yes,
I can't wait
that's
to
right.
be there as well. Thank you so much for your time. I'm so excited to meet your listeners, and I hope this was helpful.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much.
Be ambitious.